The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this wonderful Wednesday morning. Exciting show for you. You know, I love Wednesdays because we start out with Ask Dr. Dorene. Dr. Dorene Grampichet is here to answer your questions in real time. And then our second hour is Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will be joining me. We have two guests today. We're going to have Vince Redmond, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, with us today answering questions. And then our other guest is Marsha Hines, an autism mom with a book out that I think that you are going to find really particularly interesting. I know you're in there. So all of that and ever so much more throughout the show. But we like to start the show by reminding you that this whole entire production is meant to be interactive. We want you to participate with us. We want to hear from you to know what's on your mind, what questions you might have. So Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us here at the show, and some of the different ways that you can be watching. While he's doing that, I'm going to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, so much to do. Please, by the way, sign up for our email list so that you can get our free newsletter and our weekly watching guide so that you'll know who's on the show and what time that they're going to be here. There are also some perks and benefits when you do that because you get clued into some last-minute things when they pop up. Otherwise, we'd have no way of telling you, right? And you don't want to miss some of the things that we have that pop up at the very last minute. We hope that you'll also participate by using the live feature that's on that home page. There's a series of white boxes just to the right of the screen. If you put your cursor in the one that says your comment, start typing, hit enter. That's it. You don't have to log in. There's no username. There's no password. There's no asking for your credit card number. There's none of that because it's totally free and it's totally anonymous. Now, that's wonderful so that you can feel like you can ask any question that you want to. But if you do want us to get back to you, and you want to leave an email, you can. I will make sure that we don't share that with the folks at home. I hope that you will participate because honestly, that's when it's the most fun for us, when we know that we're having a conversation with you. All right, without further ado, it's time for Ask Dr. Dorene.
Dr. Dorene Grampichet is the
Dr. Dorene is an expert in autism.
Dorene Grampichet.
Dr. Grampichet.
Dr. Dorene Grampichet.
Dr. Dorene Grampichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Dorene.
Welcome to Ask Dr. Dorene, and we welcome Dr. Dorene Grampichet.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm so thrilled to have you here this morning. I'm excited because we have so many questions, and I'm always nervous that we're not going to get through them because we don't usually get through all of them.
I can't believe the list today.
And more have come in since I printed out a list. So we're going to try to get to as many of them as possible. But I do like to start the show by reminding everybody that you are a true expert in the field of autism. You've been working in this field for multiple decades. You really are a gift to our community. You're a visionary in this field.
Thank you so much. You always embarrass me.
I don't mean to because
I really appreciate
because it's
it. Thank you.
really
It's
incredible the body of work that you've done for our families and for our kids. And after you left last week, because you got on a little bit of a good rant about parents and how people should be nicer to parents on the autism spectrum. We had many people who wrote in and said, how lovely to know how much you care about our kids and how much you care about us. It's something that's palpable. We all feel that from you, and we appreciate it.
Thank
you.
We
do like to remind everybody at the start of the show that no one in this format, including somebody of your caliber of expertise, could give individual specific advice. That would be a disservice to the members of our community that we love so much. There's no way that we could tell you enough information about them that you could give individual specific advice in this format. But having said that, you give us so much information that helps us to know where we might want, which path we might want to walk down next, and that's invaluable. Well, we appreciate you greatly.
Thank you.
I'm going to dive right in if it's okay with you.
Yeah, there's so many questions here.
Yes. And here's one that I really want to get to because this is a tale that we're hearing from a lot of people. Hello, everybody. Great show. I wrote you guys last Friday and just want to give you an update on what is going on before you answer me. I hope Dr. Dorene can help me. My son has autism. He's 6. We live in Los Angeles, and we have Kaiser. We were receiving ABA therapy in-home and school. Kaiser just notified me that they're going to cancel therapy in the school because the school needs to be responsible for it. I talked to my case manager at Kaiser, and I have to go to grievance. She said that after going to grievance, they will review my son's case, and if they find a medical necessity, they might keep services in the school. Now, the big question is, what is a medical necessity for Kaiser? I know you guys feel my pain. I'm thinking, and for me, ABA therapy is a medical necessity for any child on the spectrum. My son has very little language, self-injurious behaviors. He's not aware of danger. He's eloped twice, but not from school. I need help, girls. Here is my info, and thank you for leaving that for us, which we won't share.
Right.
So
yeah, this is becoming a very prevalent problem for a lot of parents now. And I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago when insurance came along, I predicted this would happen.
yes, when I say that you're a visionary, I mean that you see all things, not necessarily the good things.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's such a cycle. We saw this cycle already with other sources of funding, and so I knew that this would happen sooner or later. Actually, it's about the time I thought it would happen, so it's not much sooner. I think insurance companies like the school districts and the regional centers and other forms of funding take about a year and a half, maybe 2 years to realize this is way beyond their imagination in terms of the cost. And so now they're struggling and becoming pretty tough in terms of cutting hours. The primary fallback is to say to parents, this is not medically necessary, and then they each define medical necessity somewhat differently and not necessarily correctly, and there is no universal accepted definition. So it's one of those gray areas that I think is to their benefit to remain gray. But anyway, having said that, we've kind of learned that basically yes, I agree with you, ABA in general is medically necessary, but that's not how they see it at all. They see this, things that are medically necessary are, first of all, cannot be considered educational, so you need to make sure that when you do this meeting or the grievance or the appeal, whichever level you go to, your provider should also be prepped for this, whoever your provider is, and because it's more the appeal. We usually write our appeals for our families, or we help our families because they don't really know the language and the terminology. But essentially, what you need is you need to express the things that your child needs to learn that have nothing to do with school. So in other words, or have nothing to do with education, let's put it that way. So if you were to say he needs language, they're gonna say that's an educational thing and the school could teach him under IEP, and it has nothing to do with us. So what you have to say is things like you listed some things: safety, danger, those are the things that are important, elopement from school. Make sure that the things that you list are things that can only be taught in the school setting, but they're not educational in nature. So for instance, he doesn't elope from home, he only elopes from school. So we need to teach him how to not elope from school. So how can we do that? That has to happen in school. Right. Or he only has issues with safety and danger mainly focused in school. Or everything that he has already learned, language and so on, at home, we need to generalize to the school setting. He doesn't use his language in school. He uses it at home, but he doesn't use it in school. So make sure you stay away from education and you focus on things that require a school setting, but are not educational in nature. I mean, there's a million things like that if you think about it. So, like, you know, he doesn't know how, he's not good around other kids. We have to teach him how to be more social around other kids. You can only do that in school.
Okay.
So there's certain things like that that you have to focus on.
What about if the child is taking any medication? Can we, and he doesn't know how to do it himself, can we say that he needs to have ABA in the school so that he can be taking his medication? Does that count? No?
No, because generally speaking, the school will have someone who will administer the medication.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's got to be things that are more like, you know, this parent had some good examples, like he elopes, he's not aware of danger, you know.
Self-injurious behavior.
Self-injurious behavior, but you have to make sure that those things are predominantly happening in school, because if they're happening at home, they'll tell you just to teach it at home.
Okay.
And so the issue is that you want to make sure that everything that is learned at home is generalized to school.
Okay.
So you cannot fund, let's say, a school shadow or an aide with this, whose job is just to stand there and get your child to pay attention, because that is really the responsibility of the school district.
Okay.
And I mean, that was inevitable. I knew this, and I knew that it would happen this way, and I was trying very hard to tell parents not to drop their educational funding, not because I knew that it would come around again, but here we are. And hopefully, I mean, I think the good news is we have to look at it as there are multiple sources of funding. Yes, it's hard to get back and start getting some educational funding, but the truth is the law is in place. Some of the stuff that your child needs in school is part of the Free and Appropriate Education Act, and you need to get that funded. And then you will have two sources of funding.
Okay, so she should hedge her bets maybe and call for an IEP meeting to talk about that.
I would absolutely, and I would, if you have prior legal counsel, I would start asking the school for funding.
And the good news that I will share with you is that because if you've had an aide in the classroom at this point, then your teacher has gotten used to your aide, and the teacher is not going to make a recommendation that the aide go away in all likelihood out of self-preservation, if nothing else.
Right.
So it's, you know, try to see the good side of the fact that it's happening in the middle of the year. That will help you to get the school on your side if you've got an aide to continue that.
And you know, I think it would strengthen your argument. The tool that will give you the biggest strength right now is a strong IEP document, or a strong set of deficit goals, like goals to meet your child's deficits. And so you would probably benefit from going on Skills and putting in your child's information, answering all the questions, and printing out a profile so that you can establish what your child needs right now. A lot of parents they know their child has a lot of deficits, but they don't have an accurate list of everything that has to be taught. I highly recommend Skills for that, because we've already done the job. We've put out there 400 or so questions, 500 questions. You answer those questions, you will know very, very detailed what your child needs to learn. And you'll know if they're educational, if they're social, if they're language, what area they fall into.
You can even print out a bar chart that shows in colors where your child is and where they should be.
The level of deficit,
it's something that can be very useful to you. So we wish you luck.
Yes, best of luck with that.
And you're what do I want to say? Trailblazing. That's the word that I want.
Certainly
And more families are going to be going through this. So write back to us and let us know what you learned through this process and how it went, because we'll worry for you.
Yes.
I find myself awake at night sometimes thinking, I wonder what happened about that. In any case, I'm going to move on to another question here. Hi, ladies. My son is 4 years, 4 months. He is a card client, 40 hours. He is doing well. I make it a point every week to take him and his siblings out. We get together with his cousins. You name it, we've done it. The social aspect doesn't seem to be of interest to him. Zero social. He is now attending a preschool. Still no social. My question is, for autistic children, can they still be good, still do good, and not have the social? Is it going to come later? Is he never going to make a friend? Are peers never going to interest him? And thanks. Air hug to her.
Oh, yes. So absolutely, you know, yes, he will develop social skills, so don't worry about that. It's a lot of times, and this is actually a really good question. It makes me think of some other situations as well. A lot of times parents think that if we teach our kids some basic speech, they will just become more social. And the truth is, that's not really the case. It would be the case with typically developing kids, but not with our kids, because they have other interests that are not social interests, and they are not able to also have perspective taking in a lot of cases, and that delays their social. So it shouldn't be expected of the child that they will develop social behavior the way that we think they would just by being exposed to other children. That's not going to happen, which is why we have a whole curriculum for teaching social skills. And just like anything else, just like teaching a basic imitation, you know, do this, we teach social skills one by one. So we'll teach you ABA through a good program. You should be teaching everything, such as, you know, how to look, how much eye contact is appropriate, how close should you stand to someone, how do you join a conversation, how do you alternate topics so that you're talking about something the other person likes, as well as your own. What types of conversations do you have with someone who's, let's say, your own age and a friend versus an acquaintance or an adult? How does the setting interact with your conversation or social behavior? How do you join groups as they're doing activities? How do you join another? I mean, there's a million other things. So the best thing is to go on our skills website again. I'm so thankful that I can always recommend this because it's out there. It's like finally I could just say go there and look at the social curriculum. Look also at the cognition curriculum and at the executive functioning curriculum. All of those have a lot of social lessons in them, and someone who has ABA training can provide those.
And they're a card client, so that they...
Oh, you're a card client.
Yes.
That's right. So don't worry, we will get there. So your supervisor will get there. What they're doing now is they are increasing language, which makes sense because your child's only 4 years, 4 months, by the way. A lot of the... okay, so the way that it works is that early childhood, we focus a lot on things like just basic language development, adaptive skills, and some early social, some early executive functioning, and play, a lot of play. And then once we, around this age, and depending on how your child's doing, we start to enter the social, cognitive, and executive functioning arena more and more towards 5, 6. Those are the ages that we're dealing with that. So all of those programs are coming. Please ask your supervisor to show you your child's skills profile. If you haven't seen that, you should see it. I try to tell my supervisors every day that they should be reviewing your profile with you at every clinic meeting. Please ask for your skills profile, and so you can see it and ask them to explain to you what's left. There's a specific picture, there's a specific bar graph, series of bar graphs that show you each curriculum area and each, like for instance, social, and all the lessons in that area, and also show you, based on the answers to the questions you already answered for the index, it'll tell you exactly where your child is and how much more they have to learn within each area. So
yeah, and you probably are going to get overwhelmed because it's going to seem
Don't
like
let it
Mount
scare you.
Everest, but then have them show you what all you just did in the last year too, so that you get
Absolutely.
a sense of, oh, okay, we've been walking on this path. Look at all the things we got done. We have
It's
a
true.
lot more to do, but we'll get there.
And you're doing everything. You're on a 40-hour program. You're with us, and your child's learning. And you know, if there's any medical issues or so, take care of those. Make sure your child sleeps well, and you should be good to go.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm happy to see kids. I still see kids. So if you'd like to get on my calendar, I don't know where you are. Do you say no?
No.
Feel free to get on my calendar too.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back with more of Ask Dr. Dorene after these messages.
Looking for some cheap festive napkins for your next party with your kids? Look no further. We're going to be making some hand-dyed paper napkins. While we make this fun activity, you'll notice that these icons will pop up. These icons lay important information about the skill and where to find it on the Skills program. Skills is an ABA-based online tool that helps parents create curriculum to help teach their children on the autism spectrum. And if you're already a skills user, this will ensure that you get the most out of this fun activity with your child. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are paper towels, food coloring, water, a bowl, and rubber bands. Step 1, you're going to take your paper towel and you're going to fold it symmetrically into a shape. This is a chance to be creative to see how repeating patterns are going to be made. Once your paper towels have been folded into different types of shapes and patterns, you're going to take your rubber band and you're going to use that to secure it in place. These are my folded up napkins. Now that they're ready, I'm going to take my water and mix it up with the food coloring and submerge the napkins in it. Once they've been submerged with the food coloring, I'm going to take it out and lay it flat to dry. If you leave it in the water too long, they're going to completely disintegrate, so just leave them in for just a moment. I've been very patient, and here is my finished pattern napkin. Well, I hope you enjoyed this activity with me today. Until next time, guys, craft on. Bye!
To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parent icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Dorene. We're going to take a quick question from Facebook. We have a bunch of questions that I fear have to do with a lot of snow that people have gotten back east. So this one comes to us from a mom who writes into us from time to time in the Midwest. She says, I'm currently hurt, and I have a feeling this came from shoveling too much snow. And she says, my child, 17, doesn't understand. It's a back issue I'm having. How do I get her to understand that I will get better, but it will take time? I do have her teacher writing a social story for her, but what suggestions for teaching a 17-year-old?
Yeah, it's very hard. It's a fascinating thing that I find also that with a lot of my older teenagers and adults, the key to their understanding is time. A lot of them have difficulty with time because it's an abstract concept, and they've never been taught it as a younger child, and it's very hard to teach the concept of time. In this case, I think the best way you can deal with this, rather than going into a full understanding of time, I think is that you should probably try to predict how long it'll take you to get better, like let's say 1 week, right? And then you should have maybe a calendar, and you should have 7 boxes, let's say 1 for each day, and you can modify all this, but I'm just suggesting some stuff. And then you could either have like a progressive smiley where the first one is not happy and then they start to get more and more happy, or even a photo of you where you're laying down the first day, second day, then like by the third day you're laying down, one picture, but you're also cooking or walking around, and then the fourth day you're up and about, and the fifth day, and so on and so forth, so that she gets an idea of what is coming. I think that's probably the easiest way to teach her. I think it was a daughter.
Yes.
To teach her what to expect, because I think and then every morning you would review that with her, and then the next morning you would review the next day, and the next day you would say tomorrow, the next day, and so on. And so that's the best you can do at this point. I mean, at the end of the day, you might want to have a picture of sleeping so she understands that every day ends with sleeping. It's really hard for our adults, but it's incredibly important. Incredibly important.
Maybe along the same lines, hello Shannon and Dr. Dorene, my son really struggles with all areas of executive functioning. He's in middle school. What should we focus on first? Memory, response inhibition, organization? He will need help with all eventually. Is there one area that we should start with? And thank you.
Yeah, I think this parent might, because these are some of the terms we from skills, like response inhibition and so on. I'm not sure, but if you are not a skills user, you should be a skills user, because you're in pretty high-level terminology here. That means you've had exposure to a lot of high-level executive functioning stuff. Please go on Skills for Autism and go in the executive functioning curriculum area if you haven't. The way that we teach things is not by area, it's by age. So even within memory, certain skills will be more delayed than others because they are tasks that, let's say, a 2-year-old should do versus a 5-year-old. So you will teach things, I would suggest, by age level. And that's why skills is also very useful, because it'll, not just within executive functioning, but within all curriculum areas. Like, I would not teach a 2-year-old letters because it's not developmentally appropriate, for instance. Or I would not try to teach a 3-year-old how to lie because it's not developmentally there yet. Typically, we don't learn lying until about 3 to 4. So, you know, you have to teach things as they are, become age appropriate, because otherwise everything builds on the previous skill, so it kind of has to go in order. So that's how you would want to teach those things. You'll end up doing a little bit of memory, a little bit of response inhibition type stuff, a little bit of organization, planning, that kind of stuff. But for instance, planning is a great example. You don't teach planning to a child who's under 5, for instance. So these are all age norms. You should look at skills because we have all the ages in there. And also, it's important to do them in the right order because they build upon each other. And you wouldn't be just doing one field. You'd be doing some language, some executive functioning, some social, and so on. And also, if you do an IQ test, if you have your child IQ tested, you'll know which one of these is weaker. You'll know if memory is problematic, or inhibition is, or the child has no ability to organize. All that comes out of the subtests of an IQ test. And also, of course, from skills. If you answer the skills index, it'll tell you which areas are weaker.
And what do you think about pawning some of this off on the school if he's in middle school? I happen to know, because I have a middle school age child, that a big part of what they're supposed to do in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is learn how to use a planner and all that stuff. And they could print out the lessons. I don't even just leave it to the teachers, but print out the lessons that are in skills and hand it to the teacher and say, put this in the IEP. You teach this.
Absolutely. And particularly in the planning area. In fact, we developed the planning section of our EF curriculum because our kids were hitting middle school. And we realized that it's very, very hard for them to use a planner in terms of, you know, an assignment is given today, but it's due in 3 days. You know, should I do it tonight? Should I do it tomorrow? That sort of thing. So it was very important for us to put that program in. Yes, you can definitely print out sections. We have actually a lot of worksheets for planning as well, in which the child can do. That really helps. But you can also give the worksheets and the whole program to teachers and or aides and the school, and ask them to assist with this.
Yeah, I think in that way you might have more time to do more of the things that you want to do. Okay, moving on to another adult question. Dear Shannon and Dr. Dorene, I have a very unmotivated 24-year-old. There's a lot of that going around, not just kids on the spectrum. His ABA therapist has done preference assessments and identified reinforcers, but nothing seems to motivate him. He lives in a group home and comes home from day program and sleeps, then stays up all night and plays video games. He has a lot of restrictions that he wants to earn back: internet, phone, alone time, but doesn't want to put forth any effort. What can we do to help him?
Well, the most important thing is that the hard, and this is not an answer I'm sure you want to hear, but this is the truth, he cannot play video games at night. So what happens is we get satiated. So, you know, if you're a therapist or a supervisor or someone, his ABA therapist has done a preference assessment, that means you actually have a series of things that he prefers, which are reinforcers. Which, by definition, a reinforcer is something that motivates. It's not. It is something that produces motivation because it is rewarding or reinforcing. So if he's not motivated to earn those reinforcers, they're not reinforcers. So it's really that simple. My feeling is, my gut tells me the internet, phone, and alone time are reinforcers, but they're just not as valuable to him as video games. And he's just getting his video games free. He wakes up in the middle of the night, plays video games. So he doesn't have motivation to earn those other things because he has his number one priority happening. So what you have to do is, in order for a reinforcer to be effective, you have to have full control over it. Let's say my reinforcer is food, and I have access to food all the time. Why would I care to wait for Shannon to give me food for having done something good? It's no longer a reinforcer in Shannon's control because I have access to it. So reinforcers have to be out of reach unless the therapist gives them as a reinforcer for something good. So if you have access to a reinforcer all the time, you satiate. That's called satiation. You don't care for it anymore because you're satisfied enough. And so what you have to do is you have to essentially put him on a diet of his reinforcers, restrict his reinforcers to only when he does the things you want him to do. And then his reinforcers will gain significant power. And believe me, everybody has reinforcers. For his could be alone time. And your deal would be, if you do this much work, you'll get this much alone time. If you do this much work, you'll get this much video games. So what's hard is that the first few nights when you take away his video games, he will freak out and he will not be happy at all. But if you have the support, or he's 24 years old, but if you have the ability to have someone there so that he is safe, he doesn't injure himself or you or others, then he will just get through the night. And however tough it is, I mean, he might scream and hit the wall and get upset and so on, as long as he doesn't injure himself or others. And you need support for that. It sounds like you have a behavior therapist. You need someone there so that he just has nothing to do in his room.
Yeah.
And then he will get through it, and actually he will start sleeping. And I highly recommend that you consider helping him with sleep. A very kind of safe thing to do is to give him melatonin of some type. We're about to start producing our own melatonin, but for the time being, I like Tranquil Sleep, which is a very good mix of melatonin, and I prefer it. I enjoy it. I give it to my children as well, and it helps them sleep for sure. Obviously, there are other things. I'm not recommending melatonin per se for you, but there are other things that you probably know by this age would make him drowsy or sleepy. Some people prefer Benadryl or something like that. Also very safe. So I would suggest that you assist him in learning to sleep, take away his video games, and I guarantee you everything will become much more motivating.
And I know for me, I know how hard it is when they love video games and they want to
Absolutely.
play them and they bargain. And one of the things that we do, and I need to put it back on because I take it off from time to time, is that almost all computers and almost all video game systems have a way that you can put a parent control in with a code that only you know that it shuts off at a certain time. Right. It just makes it so much easier.
So much easier. And you know, another thing you could do is don't allow him to sleep when he gets home from the day program. Mm-hmm. Keep him up.
Oh, yes.
Easiest thing, you know, close his door. Don't let him get to the bed. I don't know how you do it, but don't let him sleep. The later you keep him awake, the less likely it is that he will wake up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, or take him to do something that he really likes to, like swimming or something like that. It'll wear him out so that he'll need
That's
to
a
sleep
great
at night.
idea. Take him on a sports activity. Lock his door so he stays out during the afternoon. Maybe either take out the video game or put it on a timer so that it is not available except for... Here's an idea. Get him on his video game in the afternoon when he comes home, and then have it shut off automatically at night. So,
it's like playing Survivor. You have to outwit, outsmart, and outlast.
That's right.
That's what it is.
And make it very clear to him that he gets his video game at a certain time. So, and make sure it's the same time every day, and it's a time that works for everyone.
Okay. All right, we're going to take another break, and we're going to be back with more questions for Dr. Dorene Grandpichet. Stick with us.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Lisa Ackerman with Taka, and we're here with the Taka Facts, the most common questions in the autism journey, real-life questions and answers for your family. Oh boy, this one gets me in trouble. I get this question probably at least a dozen times a week, but how do I get my significant other on board? Whether it's having ABA done in your home, 5 days a week, speech therapy, or even biomedical intervention. I'm talking to you as a parent. It happened to me in the autism journey 3 years after diagnosis. I felt like I'd been through a war zone. I don't have pictures. I don't remember those 3 years. It was awful, and I'm surprised my husband and I made it out of that war zone. So here's some of the tips that helped me get through those 3 years and made it a better marriage, because he's the one I want to be with. First thing you need to do, and this goes for dudes and chicks, replace all the bathroom reading material. Now, whether you just had an independent evaluation with a neuropsychologist or you just went to your doctor, your MAPS doctor, to help your child get through some serious medical issues. Replace the labs, replace the neuropsych eval, and put that all in the bathroom. That's where we do our best reading and thinking, after all. It's one of the most simplistic things that you can do, but literally replace all the bathroom reading material. 2, very important that twice a year you have a meeting and you schedule it with your spouse to say, we're going to do the next 6 months of planning, whether it's just create a quick list, identify the issues or the self-stimulatory behavior or the things that you need to do to help your child with autism make the project. Let me give you an example. We created the Man Project. My son was becoming a teenager, and we found ourselves living a little bit in a rut, babying him a little too much. So what we did was we created a Man Project, and we identified a list of the skills and the things that we wanted my son or our son to learn. We agreed to it, and then we came up with a plan that we could activate over the next 6 months. And my next favorite. Don't forget to have sex with your spouse. Often you will feel disconnected with the person that you love. And if you're not connected with them, you're not connected with them in that way. You're not connecting with them in your autism journey. So my husband laughs, he calls me Dr. Ruth, so I'm giving you a coupon to please just go have sex with your spouse. That will help move things along, but also make it a little more cohesive in a house of chaos, living with autism. So hi, this is Lisa signing out as Dr. Ruth. No, I'm just kidding. Lisa Ackerman with Taka, and we'll talk to you at the next Taka Facts.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Dorene. Dr. Dorene Granpeesheh is here with us, and she's answering your questions live. Next question, I'm just going to jump on. I want to get as many questions in as possible.
We're still on page 1.
I know. I'm trying. I get too involved. Okay, Dr. Dorene, thank you for your suggestion to get my 14-year-old son a headset for hairdryer sound because he was having difficulty with it. He looks relaxed.
Is there any haircut mom, right?
Yes, his haircut mom, exactly. Is there any way to help him cope in case he doesn't have his headset? Long shot, but hoping that he will go to college. I can see him being teased, etc. Even his neurotypical 8-year-old sister, he dubs her stepmom, asks him why the sound bothers him. It's only the hairdryer. What should his response be? And you are all amazing and haircut mom, as you predicted.
Yes. No, I feel like, first of all, let's not worry about something that hasn't happened yet. So we kind of need to wait and see how he does. But I feel like this is, believe it or not, very appropriate. If you pay attention to kids nowadays, everyone has headphones. It's part of what they carry around. We carry around our phones. If you pay attention, a lot of kids either have headphones around their necks or they're carrying around the earphones. So I don't think this is going to stand out. I think, and in college it's even more. And I think it's going to be fine. And I think he should be honest and say, it hurts me.
Yeah.
You know, the sound bothers my ears. I have sensitive hearing, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And I think when people are that forthcoming, everybody just sort of accepts it.
Absolutely.
I think that's all of us, not just people on the spectrum. Every single person I know has something that sensory is off limits to them.
For sure. And I mean, you and I already see this, and I think it'll be more and more over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
The sensory sensitivities, many aspects, actually, not just the sensory sensitivities, but many aspects of normal are merging with ASD and many other issues. Like, you know, everything is a level. That's why I always tell people, don't get hung up on the label of autism or ASD. It's different levels and severities of things. You know, we all have certain little things that we do that are different. And I think over the next 10 years, it'll become so much more prevalent. There's so many individuals with autism and ASD in the world now, you know, and it's just becoming part of what everybody accepts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to go on to the next question because I love how it starts. Dr. Dorene, you're a genius. And they had written in right as we were finishing last week's segment where you were talking, Nancy was talking about the intervention that you had suggested for her son because he had a tantrum about the cheese and how much cheese, and you said separated into the little baggies.
Right.
And she was reporting on how that works. So this mom wants to know, my wonderful husband takes my 14-year-old son golfing. He tends to overprompt. My son does get spacey. How can I nicely ask my husband to teach my son to be independent? He's too busy with work to do IBT training, and she has a sad face there, and thank you. I want to take notes because my husband wants to do everything for Jem, and I'm always saying to him, don't do that, and that's not good for us. So I love this. How do I very nicely ask my husband to teach my son? And I'm taking notes. Go ahead.
Okay, great. No pressure here.
No pressure.
It's not an easy thing to teach. I would suggest that you, instead of generalizing it to just teach, like, okay, so we're focusing on what you want to teach your husband. Okay?
Yes.
And instead of just telling your husband, don't prompt him so much, or don't help him so much, or let him be more independent. Those are all very vague instructions. What you need to do is pick a very specific thing and identify a very specific step in that process that you would like your husband not to do. For instance, your husband is taking your son golfing, okay, and he tends to overprompt. Pick one statement or one action that your husband does that you consider to be the overprompting, and tell him to stop doing that, just that. So for instance, let's say your husband is going to stand behind your son and help him with his grip or with his swing. I don't know, I'm just assuming. Tell your son, like, one backward shaping step, one fading step would be to say, when you stand behind him and want to help him with his swing or his grip, don't touch him. So you're fading out the prompting. Once he's done that for a few times, the next thing would be, now that you're not touching him, can you also stand 2 steps away from him? In other words, how do we go to independent? When we teach something to our kids, we initially prompt them every single step, and then we start to fade those steps so that the child becomes more independent. So identify those steps in anything, and then help suggest to your husband to fade those steps. So now give me an example of, like, something that he does with Jem where you feel like he's...
and I've been thinking about, earlier last week, I caught my husband dressing in my son in the morning, almost like he was an 18-month-old. The TV was on, and Jem was not all the way awake, and we were a little bit running behind, and so Jim's like putting his arm in his sleeve and stuff, and I called him out into the other room and I said, hey, let's not do that. Instead, every morning when you come down, tell him you won't turn the TV on until he's fully dressed. He'll have it done in 22 seconds. And he has been doing that.
Okay.
So it sounds, but I think the other part of it too is that we have to remember to reward the husbands when they do what we ask them to do.
For sure.
And that's what I have.
For sure. And sometimes the husbands don't know.
Yeah.
So, and they don't want to fail. Like, I don't know if it's Jim's if it's one of his regular responsibilities to get Jem ready in the morning.
Yes, he does the lion's share of that and gets him off to school.
So he may not know that you've already gotten Jem to the point where Jem can dress himself completely. Yeah. I don't know if he knows that.
I think he does know that, but he was so out of it, that spacey thing that this mom was, and of course, Jim knows I want him to be there at school on time, and so I think he just made a judgment call of, he's too out of it and I don't want to fuss with him.
Yeah, and this is going to be a very individualized situation, right? Because some of our kids can easily respond to just having a reinforcer kind of put in front of them. You do this, you get the TV on. You do this, whatever it is, you get a reinforcer. And other kids need a lot of prompting still. Yeah. So it's really important that I think, I know this is the problem. I mean, this mom has really stated it very well, where you say he's too busy with work to do IBT training. A lot of times our spouses are very, very busy with something else, or we are very busy, and so we don't actually give it the attention that it requires. He doesn't need massive amounts of IBT training, your husband. What he needs is maybe 1 or 2 modules where he just understands the basics of behavior analysis, which is just, prompting and reinforcing, shaping behavior, that's the main one. And then he needs to have a better knowledge of your son's capabilities. Yeah. And then I think he'll be able to manage it.
Okay. It's good advice for all of us.
It's tough.
Because we're all trying to make it work with two parents.
Even in typically developing families, there's a lot of disagreement about how to push kids or how much to give them independence.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's hard.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody has their own ideas about it, and it's personal. We care. We care
Absolutely.
deeply. Okay, moving on to the next question. Hello, Shannon. As always, love your show. My son is 4.5, language delay. He's very hyperactive, and very aggressive. And one of the problems he is him being repetitive and insisting on a routine. If we do something for him once, then this is how it is done, and he will want to do it always that way. Is great if I can do that for a good behavior. And she says, LOL. But this is not the case. For example, we had lots of snow. I told you we had some snow questions coming. I put snow boots on this bad day, and when he gets home from school to change for sneakers. Now he wants snow boots every day, even when it's not snowing, and will throw a tantrum, meltdown, and become aggressive if he won't wear the boots because this is how it's been done. They're heavy and big, so he can't wear them all the time. How can I deal with repetitive and insisting routine behaviors? I'm using PECs to show him when it snows, we do this, when it rains, it's rain boots, etc. I have rewards for him, but what works are tiny pops, and he will do anything, whatever. He won't eat in the AM and wants only the pop instead. I don't know whether those are ice pops or just lollipops.
Some sort of food reinforcer.
But they said, thanks for the advice.
Oh, you have a lot in this question. I'm going to try to limit. Okay, so the primary issue, he's got some language delay. He's very hyperactive and aggressive. The primary issue seems to be, though, that his insistence on routines. So when I read this sort of scenario here for this child, what I see is some obsessive-compulsive type behaviors, like a lot of repetitive stuff. And I don't know if you're not going to love my response, but this is the way to deal with it.
It's tough love day.
It's tough love day. I'm sorry. Let him tantrum. Let him melt down. Let him have the meltdowns. Your rule means nothing if you're not willing to allow the consequences to happen. So in other words, if he has a tantrum, when you tell him you can't wear snow boots, you cannot wear snow boots today, and he has a tantrum, and you try to avoid that tantrum by allowing him to wear the snow boots, what just happened is that from his perspective, he communicated to you, I want to wear snow boots, and then he won. He was successful. He got his needs met. Always remember that when our kids have language delay, it's not like they're tantruming because they're malicious. They're tantruming or having meltdowns because that's the only way they know how to communicate. If it was a verbal child who had typical normal developing language, he would say, oh, Mom, come on, please, 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 can I wear my snow boots? Can I wear my snow boots? And in some cases, they wear you down. And in other cases, Mom would be tough and say, no, you can't. I don't care. Let's go. And that is essentially what you need to do. The only difference is that in your child's case, he doesn't have that language. He doesn't understand those types of things. And so instead of, pleading and bugging you, he'll have a meltdown. He has a meltdown because he's not getting what he wants. He's not getting access to the things he wants. And when he has the meltdown, you probably give in and allow him to wear the snow boots because you have time constraints. You need to get out. You don't want to deal with a tantrum. You hate it when he tantrums. It's hurtful to us as parents when our kids freak out. So you give in. So he learns this is a pretty effective way of communicating. If I want something, as long as I go to the level of tantrum and meltdown, they'll let me have it. You need to stop that cycle. That is the most important thing you can do. Let him have a tantrum and meltdown. Be late. It doesn't matter. It's worth it. Deal with it and set it up, in fact, make sure that initially, of course, he'll ask for it and you'll say, no snow boot today. This is all you're wearing. Even if it takes the next hour, if you need help, get someone there. If you have other kids, they can take care of the other kids, whatever it is. Set the situation up so that you don't have to give in. Don't give in. 1 or 2 days, I guarantee you he will understand that it's not effective. Give him a different mode of communication. Teach him to touch an icon for some object that he wants. If you don't want it to be snow boots, then have him ask for rain boots, whatever it is. but know that you need to be the one that stops reinforcing this behavior. Now, that's one thing aside. You do, however, need to, this will keep coming up because it sounds like he's got a lot of obsessive types of behaviors. You need to figure out why he has obsessive behaviors. The obsessive stuff usually increases with kids who have anxiety. So we, as people, we all tend to increase our obsessions when we feel anxious about something because it helps us gain control. So if you're going to take away something that he's being obsessive about, you need to give him other things that make him feel in control. The number one thing to give a child who needs to feel in control is a schedule. If you have a visual schedule that actually tells your child what's happening next, and if you put it on pictures with Velcro and he can move them around, that's even better because now he has control over what comes next. So I learned this a long, long time ago. In the very, very first years that I was working with kids, I realized sometimes our kids just want the choice. If they have the choice of a number of things and they're all important things to do, they'll choose them. They enjoy being the one to have some sense of control. Take a look at how little control he probably has in his environment and try to allow him to choose certain things, and maybe not the boot that he wears, but other things that you are able to.
Yeah, and I think that's true of all human beings.
Absolutely.
We want to have a measure of choice.
Absolutely.
Even
Absolutely.
if one of the choices is clearly not viable, I like to feel like I've got a choice.
Right. Right.
And that's important for anxiety.
And you know, kudos to you for using a PECS program because that's very, very good for your child to have some form of communication. It's very important.
Absolutely. I want to go to a question that came in on Facebook this morning, wondering how the card school in Phoenix is coming along.
You know what? Ask me that again after break because I may have an update and I'll check my phone.
Okay, I'm not sure that we're going to have a break before you're done, but we can always update you tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Okay, so not a question on your schedule here. I'm going on one that came in just a few minutes ago. Thank you so much, Dr. Dorene and Shannon, for providing this wonderful opportunity. My child, age 11, is learning to read and is progressing. I would like to see him read more fluently. There seems to be at least two problems. One, the main problem is that he needs confirmation from me for each word that he reads, even if it is a word that he knows well. Unless I repeat the word or say or nod my head or at least move my finger to the next word, he does not move forward to the next word. Sometimes I tell him that I won't say until he finishes up to a point, but still it is the same most of the times. I don't know if the order repeat word, nod, point fingers are in good prompt fading order. So that's the first problem. Two, he spells out even when it's a known word and then reads. This slows down the reading. When asked as the sight word on a flashcard, too, he does the same thing. Thanks in advance for your useful tips and advice.
Okay. Hopefully I didn't miss anything there because there was a lot of good stuff in there. You have two different issues here. One is that you want to fade out your prompts, and the second issue is that the actual way that he's responding is not correct yet. He's still spelling before he reads the word. So what I would do is before fading your prompts, I would deal with the spelling issue. So what you need to do is you need to teach him to spell in his head if he needs to, or just go forward. And so basically when he begins spelling, you will stop him and say, just read it. And if he doesn't understand what that means, model it for him. Just say the word so that he says the word. So work on the not spelling first, okay? Keep prompting him the way you are right now until he stops spelling, which really it'll have to be like you'll have to prompt him to stop, block his spelling behavior and then model for him to actually just say the word. Okay, so let's assume we master that. The fading issue, an easy way that you can do this is hold his hand in order to go to the next word, right? So you're holding, this is his hand, and you're holding his hand, and you will use his hand to point to the next word instead of your own hand. And then you will gradually start to just not hold it so firmly and then release your grip so that he will now be doing it on his own. So you'll first transfer the prompt to his body and then while you're motoring it through, and then you will gradually fade back from touching his body, and then he'll maintain it and start pointing himself, and that'll be enough for now.
Okay, but fading slowly.
Well, fading slowly, but you can't, you're having a difficult time fading. Mom is already trying to fade right now, but you're having a hard time fading because your prompt is still your body. It's still you pointing or you saying next. First transition it over to him, and then prompt him physically so that he's using his own body to prompt, and then once you fade away, it'll maintain.
Okay. Next question. Hello, I'm the parent of a young man with autism. He's now 23 years old and doing fairly well. He is close to earning his BS degree, drives, and is fairly independent.
Wonderful.
If we get him, if he were to get into a serious relationship and eventually get married and have a child, what are the chances that he would pass the autism genes to his child?
You know, it varies, and I can't really, because we don't know yet enough about how many genes are involved with autism, we haven't identified all of those genes. He most likely will have somewhat of a higher chance, but you should see a geneticist, and they will try to do a genetic tracking for him based on his own genes and yours, his genetic history. I don't know where you are, but most universities, I know UCLA has been doing this for a very long time, so that's what you should be doing. Right now, the technology is there. We have all kinds of genome reading machines that can kind of go back in time and identify the genetics that have led to this. And they're very, very telling in terms of what he will pass on as well.
Okay. Do I have time for one more question, Kelby? All right, and I gotta pick which one. Okay, hi, Dr. Dorene and Shannon. My 4.8-year-old son loves playing pretend doctor. He has a toy doctor suitcase that he plays with every day, and I do mean every day. It's great because he uses his language and he even says, now is your turn to be the doctor. After he's done being the doctor, I put the toy away, but it's visible. So since he can't reach, he'll say, I want my doctor's suitcase. Sometimes I hide it and he'll start asking for it. When I tell him I don't know where it is, he starts getting upset and saying, oh no, is it lost? We need to find it, etc. I feel like it's so routinely is the first toy he asks for every day, and sometimes plays with it twice a day. He plays with other toys too, but most of them I have to make him pick. Should I be concerned about him being obsessed with this one toy? And thank you so much. I love the show. We love you.
Yeah, we do. That's such a cute question, too. I can just imagine this little guy insisting on his doctor's suitcase. That's adorable.
Get it on video.
Yeah, seriously. Oh no, we have to look for it. That's just so cute.
I'm sorry.
That's
problem solving, right?
It is absolutely. I mean, this is choose your. I mean, talk about this is a fabulous situation.
Quality problem.
I love it. Yeah, and I apologize that I'm laughing because I know in the moment you're probably pretty worried about it, but I just think that some of the things our kids do are so adorable. So a couple of different things to think about here. You don't have to hide the thing. You can just simply tell him, I want you to play with something else first, and let him. It's like any other child. Imagine if it's like a child who wants technology, or a child who wants a doll, or a child who wants a board game. It doesn't matter. You want to kind of teach every child to have access to other things, or have a more broader array of things that they play with. So just tell him first this, then we'll play doctor. And I'm sure it'll be forced to begin with, but you'll at least give him exposure to a multitude of different types of activities, and then he might, over time, find interest in something else. On the other hand, he may not, and that's no big deal either. Find activities that are similar to his doctor suitcase. You might put together a fireman suitcase, or something else, policeman suitcase, and do that with him. I mean, everybody has their own interests, and this is a good problem to have. He likes pretend play more than he likes other things. That's perfectly fine. So don't worry about this too much. I do. The importance of teaching our kids other games is because sometimes they won't have kids around them who want to play what they want to play. And sharing and turn-taking and paying attention to other people's cues and interests are extremely important at social activities. So the best way, sounds like he's very high functioning, give him a multitude of new types of suitcases, so he has an array, and then also give him a lot of other things that are not suitcases, so he has to learn to deal with those as well, and then have him practice those with other kids, so he's doing an equal balance of both.
Okay, wonderful. We're out of time, but I do want to say that the person who wrote in about the Kaiser grievance wrote and said, Dr. Dorene, thank you for the great advice. I have a very clear idea of what to write now. I will
Great.
share with you how this ends, and I thought that just by sharing, I might find more parents on the same situation, right? And who knows? And thank you, thank you, thank you. She
Good
said.
luck. Best of luck.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for
It was a
everything.
pleasure,
It's
always.
always fun. And we will see you back here next week. But we're going to take a break and let Dr. Grandpichet go back to all the other things that she does. We are going to take a look now at the A Word. This is an ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. When we come back, it'll be time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is going to be joining me. We have licensed and marriage family therapist Vince Redmond joining us today, and also author Marsha Hines. We're very excited about having both of them with us, so stick with us. First, here is the A Word.
Wow. Sand. Does that feel funny in your hands? Do you want to go swing? Jack Riley. Jack. Good looking. Thank you.
I accept that he has sensory issues. I completely accept that he has speech delays. All of the symptoms and the things that lead up to the word autism, I have no problem accepting that. And I have no problem addressing that and being aggressive about it and making those things happen. It's the word itself that I have a hard time with, mostly because of my perception. And I imagine the perception of a lot of people that autism is Rain Man.
I don't have my maple syrup either. I'm going to be without my maple syrup and my toothpicks.
It's all these images that you see, you know, even when they put a child on TV, it's a child who's so severe and doesn't hug his parents, and because our son does that, it's just hard for me to make that leap. And then logically, I get it. It's a big spectrum, and it's just a personal thing. But it's hard for me to say the word because you don't want to admit anything.
It makes it real to say the word.
We knew it even before to a certain extent. You know, he would line up cars and
I'd walk on the knuckles of his toes a lot.
I mean, I remember even having conversations saying like, I'm sure he walks on the knuckles of his toes. I'm sure he lines up his toys.
Yeah, and the more times you say, oh sure, then you find eventually you've got to
He spins.
draw a circle around those and say, okay, what does that add up to?
So we always noticed that.
He didn't point.
He never pointed, although we didn't realize that until we went through this process. If our pediatrician had asked us, you know, 8-9 months ago, does your son point? We would have known a lot right then. We decided last fall to get Jack Riley tested for speech delay. We noticed that he wasn't saying a lot. He didn't say mommy, he didn't say daddy. He was a little different when we would take him out in public. So we contacted the regional center to get him evaluated for speech delay, in my mind. And that was the worst I thought it would be. So when they told us autism, I think that word was far worse than we ever expected.
Yeah, I remember I kicked the garbage can when we were outside. My foot hurt. I remember that. And that wasn't a very good day.
How were they with letting you know that was the diagnosis?
I guess in my recollection, and this is me projecting quite a bit, but they pitied us.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable. And they're talking sort of like I was 12 years old or something like that. Who knows how to deal with that kind of stuff? I mean, even if you're a professional and that's what you do all the time, I don't know. You don't know the people you're telling very well.
There was a lot of the head shaking, and you know, he's still the same beautiful child that you came here with, but yet they're sitting there like they've just given us a death sentence.
Yeah, it's almost like
They just told us he had cancer or something.
So I don't know if I'm reading that in, or I don't think that I like them that much. I still don't think I do. And we didn't love that process either. They brought him in there and gave him 45 new toys and said he's more interested in the toys than he is in us.
We
Strange
thought
people that he never met.
We thought what kid wouldn't be, but.
But then in retrospect, in the hour and a half, 2 hours that he was there, he never once showed us one of the toys. He didn't come to us to engage us in any of it. And actually they did us a favor because we would have fought it. I mean, just in our heads, we would have fought the autism diagnosis. We wouldn't have. Had they told us that he's fine, we would have left and got him speech therapy, and that would have been it.
Probably, yeah.
We're pretty numb about all of this. I mean, we found out November 2nd. It's 4 months. It's also kind of a mourning period, so I think we went very numb for a while.
Yeah.
But we're coming out of that now too, where we're starting to, click that there are things that we can do. I mean, I think for the unfortunate part for a while was that we were both thinking, come and help us, everybody, please.
Mm-hmm.
We have this thing that we don't know how to deal with it, and time's a ticket, come and help us, tell us, and now we're just kind of do it ourselves, and we're the ones who know him best, and we can take all this information that people tell us, and then we can adapt it to what we know will work for him, and he's already responding. It's slow, but
I personally forgot for a while to enjoy him. I just took care of him all day, and I wasn't having fun. Now I'm back to just how cute he is and how incredible that little thing he just did is, and that smile and the joy he gets out of one simple little thing. And but for a while there, I forgot to do that. I just was getting through the day. Maybe he didn't want to notice. Maybe I didn't want to notice things because a lot of them point to the A word, autism again. There's no one to talk to about it, because even when you bring up the idea that's possible, your family members, no, he's fine. They want to help you say no and deny it. He seems fine. It's just, my son didn't talk till he was 3.5.
Yeah, a lot of people, that was part of why we didn't even have him evaluated until we did, because a lot of people would tell us that.
Yeah, and everyone tells me their son didn't speak till he was 3.5 and wasn't potty trained till he was 4, and so, my kid's normal. Well, it's easy to deny it, but we're not denying anymore.
I ordered a pair of earrings, and they were puzzle pieces, because my son liked puzzles, and I thought, this is in honor of my son, I'll wear these earrings, they had the right colors, and I thought, this is great. And we were probably two days away from going to this diagnosis, and I'd done enough research to know what they might say. And it occurred to me that puzzle pieces were symbolic of autism. And I was like, I have to send them back. This is terrible. I can't believe I've ordered autism earrings.
Yeah.
And didn't wear them for months. They sat there, I looked at them every day, and I thought, I'm going to put these earrings in today and accept it and move forward. And couldn't do it. That I can't wear them to OT because they'll think I'm just wearing autism earrings to, make a statement. And I finally started wearing them probably, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
So I guess that means I'm getting used to the idea.
I see it in adults now. I'm very conscious of it. Maybe it helps to just think everybody has it a little bit. We were getting Jack a haircut a few weeks ago. We still say the A word instead of autism. I'll say A word, you A word. And
That was for real, though.
That was real. This 15-year-old kid walks in, and Toy Story 3 is on, and there's little kids getting their hair cut, sitting on chairs and animals and whatever. And he starts talking out loud to whoever would listen, saying how much money Toy Story 3 had made, and it's the largest grossing in history, and blah, 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 blah. And then he goes, okay, I'll see you guys later. And he walked out, and I go, A word? And she goes, oh, yeah. Okay. So at least we're we got a little sense of humor about it now.
Are you watching Daddy dance?
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
Hello, my friend.
Hello. Thrilled that we're here today. And we don't
Yes.
have a whole lot of time because we have two guests today.
A lot of guests. Good guests.
But I'm excited to be here with you and excited about our two guests. We've got a couple of in the news stories. Then we have licensed and marriage family therapist Vince Redmond is going to be with us.
Talking a little bit about romance, crushes, sexuality.
Yeah,
all
we're
very
delve right into that.
Yeah, we delve right in. And Marsha Hines.
Yes, author of the book. I know you're in there. I've got several places that I want to quote from in the book that are marked. I even highlighted. I'm not a highlighter, but I highlighted something that I wanted to read. She's going to be here with us talking about this book and about some of the things that she's been through, and I think it's going to be...
Who's doing unbelievably well right now, and you know, we all aspire to have these kinds of success stories. So
Absolutely.
I think we've got a lot to learn from her.
Absolutely. But starting within the news, a couple of big things going on.
Yeah, a big story about researchers may have developed a spit test that one day may be able to diagnose, I love the one day, diagnose autism according to new research. They have published the first study showing that children with autism spectrum disorder had differences in their protein levels in their saliva when compared to typically developing children.
And fascinating, and this is a small study, just 6 children that were on the spectrum and 6 that weren't, but fascinating. What I find interesting is that what the media has glommed onto this is that this might be a way of diagnosing earlier so that we can get to treatment. I think that that's really fascinating, and I'm excited about that. But the part that grabbed me in reading about it is that these proteins are identified primarily as having functions with the immune system response or are elevated in people with gastrointestinal problems. How many times do we need to hear about immune system? And of course, we're going to be talking about more about that with Marsha Hines, but immune system issues and gastrointestinal issues with autism. And is it not possible that identifying these proteins and what the difference are and maybe changing them could help with the gastrointestinal problems and the immune issues? That's what I want to know about. I think that the diagnosis is great and getting earlier treatment is absolutely crucial. We know that. But if it's something that can also help us with those medical issues.
Yes, which, as we all know, that autism is a total body disorder.
Yes.
Neurological, but the body affects the brain.
Absolutely.
And, you know, a lot of us moms, and with Wyatt's case, he has hyperimmune dysfunction. So we know there are some issues here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of our kids have gastrointestinal issues. So it's all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found that particularly fascinating. And then I don't know if you saw this in the news yesterday about the teacher here in California who was removed from his job while they investigate. And the reason why they're investigating is that he was reportedly hugging an 8-year-old who was on the autism spectrum who was asking for hugs.
Yes.
And who was asking to sit in his lap.
And the teacher did so, and the mother said she had no problem.
Yeah, she was fine with what it is, but the school is saying that they need to further investigate it.
Because there could be repeated acts of inappropriate behavior, and there could be multiple victims.
It's interesting, isn't it?
I don't know. If somebody was hugging my child, I mean, I know these issues are complex, and
absolutely,
I know the school district has to look into this, but I don't know. Hugging my child when he wanted a hug at age 8, I don't think I'd have an issue with that. But
you know, and maybe a parent would, but then that could be a case by case. I just find it fascinating that there are other circumstances where kids are coming home bruised from schools, and schools aren't investigating that. And
amen.
And in my son's school district, they hug all the way up through 6th grade. They stand in line as they're about to go into school, and it's a sideways hug, but the teacher has to hug every single child every single day before they go up to the classroom. It's just a thing in the school district.
Okay,
so you know, different strokes, different folks.
Yeah, there are a lot of 50 Shades of Grey here.
Oh, hopefully not that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I don't get that whole thing, but whatever.
I don't
50
get
Shades
all
of
the
Green, they said, but you know, I saw. We were going to see other films like Birdman and stuff, and I saw the lines, and I looked over at some of the women in line, and I thought, oh God, you really must have a boring life. Just saying.
And on that note, we have a licensed marriage and family therapist who's going to be joining us in just a minute, Vince Redmond.
Or maybe I have a boring life.
No, I don't. You know, honestly, I don't get it either. I didn't read the book.
Well, I
wasn't interested
tried,
in the
but
book.
after about 10, my husband bought it for me, and after about 10 pages, I'm like, I don't have time to read Shakespeare and Dickens. Why am I going to read this rot? And I threw it in the trash.
Well, I didn't really get Twilight either, if we want to go there.
No,
I didn't really
know, and let's
understand the
not
Twilight
get
thing.
to yeah, but,
but
you know, I just think we should be paying to. There are a lot more important things like
Well, there are
why
other
1 in
books-
68
there are other
children
books
have
to read.
autism, and
there are other
maybe
books
more
to
people should
that
read
fill
this
our time.
book.
So, in any case, yes, and other movies to see.
Yeah,
and now that you've seen all the movies, do you see what I mean about autism as a running theme through a lot of those movies?
Imitation Game. He is so Asperger's.
And although they never say autism,
never say it. Well,
so
they
clear.
don't think that in those days, but I mean, he definitely was
it's
Asperger's.
textbook. It's textbook.
Textbook.
And then, did you see The Judge?
I have not seen The Judge.
And there's a character in The Judge that's on the spectrum.
Okay.
But although they never actually say autism, but clearly on the spectrum.
Okay. Well, this is good. This is great strides. We need more of this. We need more exposure. We need more brilliant actors playing these roles. I thought Benedict Cumberbatch was brilliant.
Yes, he was.
And I think it's all a good thing. But, you know, I say less 50 Shades of Grey and more, you know, books like this. I know you're in there.
I know you're in there. All right, so we're going to take a break. We have Vince Redmond joining us, and then a little later in the show, we have author of I Know You're in There, Marsha Hines, going to be with us. So stick with us.
Well, today is the One Hope Act Today for military families, 10K and 5K run, walk, and family fun festival.
Thanks for coming out to support this awesome cause.
What I'm trying to accomplish here is to get more people involved, more people to be aware of autism as a disorder so that they can be more involved in this effort to help people find resources.
Pull that belly button in, get a nice balance there.
This is an incredible event. I'm very passionate about it. Autism is affecting so many kids across the United States, and I also support our military.
2, 3, 4. My name's Gunnery Sergeant Sean Tajma, working with the School of Infantry West. I'm currently running with 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. I personally involved with this because my son Jacob has autism. I just want to say thanks to ACT Today for what they're doing to help my family and other military families with autism.
Here we go, let's hear it for the 2nd Light Infantry.
Some of the main sponsors here, of course, One Hope Wine is the title sponsor.
What we do is we donate 50% of our profits back to different partner charities, one of them being ACT Today that does a fantastic job.
ACT Today is very dear to my heart because when my husband was deployed, they were there when we didn't know how we were going to make things happen. They give so much to the military family, and it comes at a time when you just don't know how you're going to make ends meet. So to me, it's more than just an event, and it's more than just a grant. It's a gift.
All right, you guys, have we gone over the rules?
Thank you all to the teams, to the individuals that donated to this fantastic cause out here again this year. The event got larger.
People ask me why military families with autism, why does ACT Today have that as a special program? I'll tell you why. Because our military families should not have to fight 2 battles. One, to protect our country, and another, to get services for their children. They move so often. Every time they move, they have to start again. We owe it to them. And it just was a tremendous success. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking part in it.
Check this out, Marine. See all these wonderful people? All you gotta do next year, Marine, Devil Dog, 2 for 100, sign up with me, staff or an email, and I'm gonna take you out here, do a little 5K, little PT early in the morning. After that, you're gonna have the time of your life. After that, I might even be able to get you a letter of appreciation, maybe a little libo time. How's that sound?
Sign up for next year because this is an event that comes on and on. It's a win-win situation here.
And we're back, and that was the run video from last year, and it's coming up. It's right around the corner, March 28th. We want everybody to register, either be a virtual participant and support us, or come down to San Diego to support military families with autism. This is our big event for them, our largest fundraiser to help them.
It's a great event. Participate.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. So the Act Today for Military Families.Conterra.org. You can support a team. You can form a virtual team. You can become a runner. You can make a donation. Please, please do it.
But joining us right now via Skype, we have Vince Redman, licensed and marriage family therapist. And Vince is a regular with us. He's on once a month.
Yes, he is.
Which almost isn't enough.
No, I could have him every week.
We could just every day, Vince, we could run to you and have us
As a matter of
fix
fact,
things.
why don't you just move into my house? Because the way things are going.
We could do daily sessions.
I'd appreciate it so much. Jim and I have always joked that the divorce rate is so high amongst autism couples that someday we're going to come home from the grocery store and there's just going to be a divorce decree taped to our front door that we didn't apply for, but that they say it was going to happen.
But it doesn't get any easier. I was actually talking to Marsha Hines out in the control room about this, and she touches on it in her book, and she's out there with her husband, Frank. So, Vince, we're not talking about parents, though.
We want to talk a little bit, because we just had Valentine's Day last week, and because February is the month of love, and we were talking about 50 Shades of Grey a minute ago.
Hopefully not that kind
Thought we would have a little conversation about crushes and about dating and about all those things, love and all of that on the autism spectrum.
Well, that's a big, broad category for sure.
Shall we shoot a first question at you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do we start seeing crushes in our kids around the same time as you would in a neurotypical child?
I mean, I think it varies, depending on the severity of the disorder with the kids. But yeah, I think with a lot of our kids, we start to see some of the crushes that, even though they might, topically look a little bit different, but there's, there's that affection, that cuddling, that wanting to be with people, either it be a peer or it be a teacher or an aide, that you typically would get at, your junior high school levels.
Right, like Wyatt going up and just basically touching one of his aides, on the breast. That might qualify as a little bit of a crush.
Yeah, I mean, and again, and I laugh because, there's the social norm part of it that we all know what part of it is appropriate and not. But our kids, they're still learning that. They're still learning what those social norms are. They're still learning what those social cues are. However, that doesn't take away that internal feeling to want to connect, that want to be with someone that they're affectionate to. And like I said, it could be anywhere from one of the adults, that teaches them or caretakes for them, down to their peers, where they want to stay with those peers, even though they might be bothering them or annoying them. They want to be with them. They want to stay with them. They want to talk about them, ad nauseum. And the reason is because they have that connection and they want to share it.
So how do we stop that little incident that I just described from happening? Do we talk about it in advance, and do we teach that sort of body awareness and what's appropriate before this happens?
Well, both. I mean, there's a lot of different things. Obviously, we want to do antecedent modifications, which is, again, talking about, pre-learning, what do you do when you want to talk to someone? What do you do when you want to be with them or you want to touch them? Where do you touch them? Their arms, their hands, maybe their shoulder, those types of things. And then there's the language part of it, the replacement behavior. We want him to use his language more, say, I want to sit with you, or can we go play, or can I, again, if we're talking with a peer, something maybe like, can I hold your hand, or sit with me for lunch, those types of things. So there is, a lot of kind of pre-learning on what to do. But then when the actual, situation is occurring and we know there's an identified person, we want to use, his language as well as his social awareness to continue to, to grow.
Now, Shannon, you said Jim has had a crush already.
Yeah, and in fact, I loved Parenthood. It just finished the series, and there was a storyline in Parenthood where Max Burkholder, who played a young man on the autism spectrum, had a crush on a girl and wasn't really understanding the cues that she was giving back. She was friends with him and really cared about him deeply, but he thought that meant, oh, we're going to be together for the rest of our lives. And I watched as the mom in the show was trying to get get in and make everything so that nobody would ever get hurt. And I thought, oh, I have years before I have to worry about this. And then last week, you know, my son, and I have to be careful in case people are watching,
I know.
but it was disclosed to me that there was somebody that there was a particular interest in, and I'm already in that space, and I want to get in there, Vince, and I want to, you know, kind of massage things and tell him don't have those feelings, and I'm stopping myself. But on both sides of it, what kinds of things can parents do to help kids to understand what the signals are, and what can parents do to stop ourselves from wanting to get in and mix in and make it worse?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. We can't change emotions. We can't go in there and stop him from, you know, or any of our kids from feeling a certain thing, right? Or if they're attracted to someone, or again want to have that social connection, which we've been trying and working on and to some extent programming for years, right? So now we're seeing the generalization, the natural, you know, kind of fluidity of this happening. And again, as parents, we kind of go, whoa, you know, maybe this is farther than we want it to go. But we can't stop it. And I think we're setting ourselves up for bigger problems when we try to stop it. But from a parental point of view, we want to look at this as education. We want to look at this as a learning opportunity for them to work on their social awareness, to work on their social cueing, to work on their social language, and how to foster that relationship, whatever it may be. Now, again, if there's a heartbreak that comes into it where one likes one more than the other, again, that's a very natural progression and a learning opportunity that happens with all our kids, right? And so we want to use those opportunities to continue to teach our kids at whatever level they're at, you know, the social awareness, the social language, the social cueing that they need to know.
Now, dating is a big topic, so we might want to save that for later, but sexuality, let's kind of just get there for a little bit. You and I had a conversation one night, and we were talking about some of the physical changes that happen with boys, and obviously they happen with girls too, around the ages of 11, 12, 13, and boys a particular, you know, change that comes up.
It's all out there for them, so they can't help but notice when things are changing, right?
So we've been dealing with this. Let me just tell you, Vince, the way we've been dealing with it at the advice of our supervisor is when we see it happening, that physical occurrence that happens in boys, I don't have to name it, we say, do you need private time? Hands down, go to your room if you'd like private time.
Right.
And we don't necessarily get into this whole discussion about it. Is that how you recommend kind of when those things first come up?
And we're just slightly different because we do talk about it, but I say, you know, hey, dude, that's yours. Do whatever you want with it as long as you don't hurt it, but take it behind a closed door.
Okay. Well, I think there's also different levels there of understanding. Wyatt is just doing something because it feels good, and I say, that's a private thing, and I'm not yet ready for the talk.
But I think it's similar to what Shannon was saying as well. I mean, with both boys, in all situations when you have that pubescent boys, right? They're going into puberty. They're starting, you know, to have erections where a lot of times there's not a reason or rhyme. It just, you know, as
in the grocery store,
it just happens.
That's a good one.
All boys and
love
men
that. You're in line, and all of a sudden you look down, and that's my kid.
Yeah, I mean, at that age, a lot of times it happens without, like I said, without reason or without cause, you know. And I think every young male has had that embarrassing moment, either being in class or, like you said, at the grocery store or out on the soccer field, and you're like, what the heck? You know, so like you guys are saying, trying to shame it or saying it's embarrassing or saying that, you know, it's something that shouldn't be happening, obviously is something that they don't have control over, and that would be inappropriate. But having them go and be alone. This is a time when you see, you know, that physical reaction for whatever reason. That's a time to be by yourself. You go to the bedroom, go to the bathroom. You know, each parent and each family on what happens from then is a little bit different based on, you know, their belief systems and what they want to do. But the idea, though, is that when that happens, it's okay, but that's your sign to be alone. That's your sign to go into another room or go into a different environment so that you're by yourself until it either handled or it naturally resolves.
Now, I would imagine, we don't have girls, but I would imagine with girls this can be a particular time because, let's face it, that's a pretty major physical change girls go through. Do you advise parents to deal with that in a particular way, the onset of menstruation?
No, I think again, it's difficult depending on the level of understanding per child, but I think when you start to get in nowadays, I mean, and we're talking as early as 11 years old, we have to start, talking about, what's going to happen. And I think each family, each parent has somewhat of an understanding or at least an instinct on around what time, what age that their child's going to start puberty, start that menstruation cycle. And that's when it's time to start talking about it and start preparing, either it be practicing on what to do with pads, on maybe a higher level understanding about talking about what menstruation is, maybe social stories and those types of things. So you're looking at every different angle from your preparing, kind of your preparedness, getting them to understand what pads are, what you do with them, how you do it, and when it's necessary, to actually the more of the biological understanding of what's going on. Right. But I do think that some preparedness, is a good idea when the girls are getting to that age.
Yeah, and then there's the issues of hygiene. We have, wash your pits, wash your private parts listed on the, in the bathroom.
A visual schedule. It's great.
Additional schedule. Yeah, we have the bathroom schedule, and he likes this axe because it's.
That's what Jem has now too. We got that for Christmas.
Yeah, it's the body wash and the deodorant.
He's all about
it's
it.
Macho.
Yeah. Because that was all that was in the stocking was all the body hygiene.
Yeah, you want them to think it's really cool.
Well, this is why the girls are all over them.
Yeah,
I know they are with Wyatt. It kills me.
They
like that silent type. They love guys that walk away from them and don't respond to their overtures.
He's a bad boy. Yeah, but I think, it's funny. I was talking to somebody about the fact that we had made that big shift at this Christmas that it was all the stuff in the stocking, and I showed him the Axe
stuff. Not the bubble bath anymore.
And the Johnsons and Johnsons stuff.
Yes, not Johnsons and Johnsons anymore.
And the deodorant and all that stuff. And I said to him, this is about being a big boy and smelling good, and people will smell you. And what was funny is that a friend of mine who teaches 7th graders said, why don't more people have these conversations with their kids? And I know, because, I know a lot of neurotypical boys that nobody's had the discussion with them yet.
And there are some smelly neurotypical kids running around out there.
I was going to say, there are some kids that need that talk, for sure.
Yeah, but that's something, and I know what we did was we laminated something, we put it in the bathroom, and it had the,
visual schedule.
Yeah, visual schedule. So,
love it.
Okay, well, I think dating, we have to tackle another time, don't you, Vince?
I agree. I think that dating we'll save for another day and get your expertise on
lots of dynamics there.
Okay, because we've got to get Marsha on here to talk about the book.
But Vince, thank you so much, as always, for being with us and for helping us to sort through this minefield of different stuff.
No problem. Anytime.
Thank you, Vince, and happy post-Valentine's to you and Deb.
Thanks, ladies. You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we're going to take a short break, and we're going to bring Marsha Hines in. We're going to be talking about her book. I know you're in there.
I skimmed it. I'm going to read the whole thing, so I'm gonna do a lot of listing and a lot of interjection. But I'm all for honesty. That
I've got
didn't get the chance
my
on
bookmarks
Monday.
here, all kinds of wonderful things that I
know.
Highlighted even.
So fascinated with her story. We were talking a little bit before the show.
All right, so
Frank.
stick with us. You're going to love this.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, where is he? What is he doing? Is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Dorene Grandpichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, they wouldn't be able to receive a service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
We're ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community. And we are back, and joining us now is the author of I Know You're in There, Winning Our War Against Autism, Marsha Hines. Welcome, Marsha.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we
Such
love
a
having
thrill
you
to have
here.
you here.
And as we said, we want you to read this book instead of 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah,
Something on your
absolutely.
reading list if you're an autism parent, because it's filled with great information about your journey.
Yes.
So, Marsha, tell us, if you will, what really is this book about?
Well, my son Ryan is now 26, and he's an engineer at a major aerospace company. And his job at that company, which if you would have told me when he was this little weird kid going around the house he had this little portable radio that he carried with him everywhere, and he plugged it into every outlet over and over and over again. And he did every light switch, he did every fan, you name it, he did it. And
repetitive behaviors.
Yes, a lot of repetitive behaviors and wanting everything to be the same over and over and over again.
Right.
And if you would have told me he'd ever be doing what he's doing now, I never would have
Blown you
believed
over with a feather.
Yes. And to be honest, most of what I did back then was so I could tell myself if I ever had to find placement for him, that, I did everything possible.
Right.
Thank God for guilt.
Yes.
Because I probably wouldn't have done half the things I did.
But I have to say that as a parent, as I've interviewed so many parents who have gotten their kids to a point where they use a word like recovery or say that they,
Right.
left the diagnosis behind, the one thing that I find in common, besides the fact that they've had some measure of taking care of the medical side of kids and some measure of ABA, which we're going to talk about that you did both of those
Right.
things, is the attitude of the parents is always that and they all say pretty much the same thing, that I determined that I was going to be able to look my kid in the eye and said I did everything that I could have. that kind of will, and you certainly in your book you chronicle that you did everything and then some.
Well, you know, I'm always amazed at the moms that I meet because they are so strong and they are so determined. And, you know, I'm going to go to Autism-1 this year, and I'm going to be in the recovery lounge with a group they call the Mothers Determined.
Right.
Because we're all authors with recovered kids. And, you know, we all did it different ways.
Yes.
But the kids are okay.
Right.
The one thing that makes my kid different is he's an adult and he's a proven success. Because,
yes, he is.
you know, at age 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, I thought he was doing pretty good. And, you know, I might have sort of said the recovered word, but he really wasn't.
Right.
I thought he was. But as kids get older, the social skills get harder.
Yes, the gap widens, as they say, the academic gap and the social gap. This is what I'm finding with Wyatt.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I want to look at a couple of things in the book because there are a couple of things that I just thought were fascinating. First of all, the foreword written by your son, I think, is required reading for every parent of a child with autism.
Are you going to read it? It always makes me cry when
I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to talk about the fact that one of the things that I loved about your book is how courageous and honest you are, and that you have other people's voices in the book that are not yours, your son, your husband, your daughter, and you allowed them to be honest, and sometimes it wasn't necessarily the most flattering thing for you. And I thought, wow, you know, how brave of you to have allowed that, right?
You know what? I've had to put up with that from them for many, many years. As a matter of fact...
But you didn't have to put it in print.
No, I didn't.
But
As a
you
matter
did.
of fact, sometimes Ryan calls me and he says, "Did you see the Goldbergs?" You know, because he compares me to Mrs. Goldberg.
I get that too. I get that too. That's a compliment, I think. But in any case, he talks in here about what, you know, that you wrote this, gave it to him, and said, what do you think? Is it okay to share this? And that there's a part of him that isn't necessarily thrilled about all this being out there.
No,
but
he's not. And the people he works with have no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, I always talk about that he works at a major aerospace company because I don't want to mention where he works.
Right.
But, you know, they have no idea he was ever severely affected with autism. And, you know, he's a little nerdy, you know, like most engineers.
Yes.
But that's
all good, smart people.
Oh, well, yeah. You know, but, you know, they wear that almost as a
badge.
Yeah,
nerd
nerdy
badge.
is in.
Well, okay, so you were going to go through some passages, and then I want to find out some of the pivotal...
Right.
Because every parent out here wants to know this. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
What worked, what didn't, and I know that's not a simple question because there are a lot of things that kind of work, a lot of things, and you know, I say it's the pasta that you throw against the wall and some sticks and some slides down.
I like that.
Because I've had some of those things with my own son, and I know Shannon has with Jem. So I want to get to that. But
yeah, but one of the quotes that I really had to read because I think you encapsulated, we were talking the other day about how there are different stages of autism for moms, and I think you encapsulated the beginning one so beautifully. You wrote, one of the hardest things to deal with when you have a child with autism is that you don't know the rest of the story. You have no clue how things will turn out. Not only do you have an awful day-to-day existence dealing with the behaviors of your child and the shortcomings of your medical and educational systems, but you are frightened beyond words about your child's future.
Pretty much sums it up.
And that was the hardest, I think, and I think is still the hardest for most moms because you're worried who's going to take care of them if something happens to me?
We're all worried about that.
It's the big question mark that we always talk about in those first days about, and you're asking everybody, how is my child going to end up? What's going to happen? But I thought you did that beautifully. But we do want to talk about, because in this book, you describe yourself as someone who is willing to go down, drive far away to buy some prism glasses.
Oh, I did the crazy things, yes.
Because somebody told you that it might
work.
Cure autism.
Yeah. Right, and
then
we all go down that road.
Yeah, we do. I bought a hyperbaric.
Yeah, there you go.
Know, we bought one. I put it in our home.
You're worse than I am. Then.
Oh my God!
The glasses were a little cheaper.
We did an IVIG. We did IVIG for a year. We did chelation for 3 years. We did, everything.
But you describe yourself as somebody that you say afterwards, I could think about it logically and say, if I thought about it, I would know that prism glasses are not going to cure autism. But there was that need in you to look and see everything.
Right.
But eventually, you get on a path. We should say at this point that both you and your husband had some early very interesting
ironic
exposure to autism and to ABA before you ever thought of having children. Tell our viewers about what you and your husband were doing back in your college days.
Well, we met at UCLA, and I kept dumping him every time a cute guy came along.
Right.
But he kept coming back, which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
But, UCLA was very overcrowded, and you couldn't get all the classes you needed. And one time, he needed to fill a class, and he was sort of frustrated because there weren't any. And I said, trying to placate him, and because I was his girlfriend, I said, hey, I heard about this one class that's really, really good, and it's called Psych 170A, and it's behavior modification. And it was taught by Ivar Lovaas. And I said, let's just go listen. Let's go see if it's any good. Well, I sat down, and I was fascinated. And he's really funny. He could be hysterical. What he would do is he'd get people to do things. When they did what he wanted, he clapped. Okay. And so they're trying to figure out what it is he wants, and he'd have them doing all these crazy things. And he captivated the room. He just did. And by the end of the time of sitting there, I signed up for the class as well. And we went on to be behavior therapists with these kids, but really we weren't trained. We weren't trained the way people at CARD are trained, who understand why you're doing, what you're doing, and what you're doing when.
Right.
Back then, it was more like they would give us a drill to do, and we'd do it over and over and over again and not really understand it. And
it was the discrete trials really rigid. Did this help you? Ryan was diagnosed at 4.
Right.
You had this background. Did it help you to see the fact that your child had the traits of autism?
No, it didn't.
And that was fascinating to me in the book, that I would have thought you would have been the first person saying, let's do this, but you described that you had sort of an antiquated view of ABA.
Yes, we did. And it wasn't, when we were there, they still used things like negative reinforcement and things that were really awful.
Adversives.
Adversives. And I thought, I never laid a hand on my first kid. I can't say that with Ryan, I'm sorry to admit. But with Megan, all I had to do was look at her, and she did the right thing. With Ryan, it wasn't that easy.
Right. And did he did he regress? Was he typically developing and then regressed?
My husband said he did, but I don't see it that way. I thought he had it from the beginning.
And did he display traits at, say, 2 that could have been diagnosed?
Possibly,
because
I was in denial.
Me too. And
I wanted it to be anything else.
And you probably had a lot of enablers around you helping that denial, saying, he's a boy, he's a late talker, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. The pediatrician was
But to move forward a little bit, you did eventually do ABA, but you also went down a path that is so talked about now in terms of looking at immune system. You refer to it as NIDS, N-I-D-S. Tell our viewers what it is that you're talking about when you talk about NIDS.
NIDS stands for Neuroimmune Dysfunction Syndrome. And the doctor who helped us most, he came up with that term. And he came up to it because he said he didn't want to call it autism, because it really isn't autism.
Right, and that's Goldberg, correct?
Yes,
that is
Goldberg.
Wyatt has seen.
Yeah.
He's been there and back and there and
kind of a controversial figure in the world of autism.
Yes, he is.
Exactly.
He believes it is immune and viral.
And I think for a lot of kids it is, but I think some kids are different.
Yes.
And some kids have other causes, and I was lucky because he did what fit my kid.
Right.
And when we went to him, there was an amazing change.
Okay.
Well, actually, the first amazing change was diet.
Right.
That was the thing.
And what diet did you go on?
Well, I called up Dr. Rimlin. I didn't call him up to talk to him. I called up ARI, the Autism Research Institute, and I was surprised. The phone was answered by this nice person, and his name happened to be Bernie Rimlin. Right. I didn't know who he was. I had no idea.
For those of you that don't know, Bernie Rimlin is the father of the biomedical movement and the man who is responsible for showing the psychiatric and medical community that autism was not a psychological disorder, but a neurological disorder.
Yeah.
He has a son, an adult son named Mark, and he is the hero of Dr. Dorene Grant-Pichet, who his portrait is hanging upstairs.
He was my hero too.
Yes,
he was.
I think he's a hero to a lot of us.
And we, you know, over the years we kind of diversed on some of the things we believed, but oh my God, I respected that man more than anything.
So what did you take out? What did you feed?
Well, I talked to Bernie and he said, you know, we find that a lot of kids react to dairy. And why don't you try removing dairy from his diet for a week? And at the end of the week, give him a glass of milk. And the change, I didn't think diet did anything. The change was so phenomenal. I never gave him that glass of milk.
Right.
And really, my first understanding that this was medical was not due to like pristine doctors and wonderful facilities. It was due to this underfunded researcher who had a strange idea about cows.
Yeah. Well, but you go into great detail in the book about every step along the way and the things that you discovered. You describe your relationship with Dr. Goldberg as being very complicated. That it was.
We screamed at each other all the time.
Screaming on the phone.
Yeah, there was one
and
time
then you would
he
leave
told
him.
me. There was one time he told me that we should go to counseling together after this was all over.
Interesting. But I particularly love, there is a chapter in the book where you talk about the fact that if you had tried to do the ABA without looking at your child as somebody who needed medical intervention, you don't think you would have gotten as far. And that if you'd only done the medical intervention without the ABA, you wouldn't have gotten as far, that both of those things needed each other. And I think that that's an idea that has taken a long time to come to fruition, but more and more people are in that spot. I certainly agree that if my son hadn't had dietary intervention, he wouldn't have been prepared for the ABA.
Right.
And we could never, there are people who think you can just do the diet and never do the ABA, and I cry for those people.
I do too. And you know, the one thing I do want to say is there's a lot of parents who worked as hard as I did. And equal effort doesn't mean equal outcome.
No,
right.
There are kids that do not respond, and it doesn't mean you're not good enough,
and you're not doing it right.
It doesn't mean you didn't do the right things. This is, I just want everybody to let go of that guilt trip right now. I know families. I have a family on my board whose child is nonverbal, is a late teen, and they have done everything.
Yes, I
know
people that way too.
So it does not mean that you're not doing a good job.
And it breaks your heart when you see it, because some kids have immune systems that are just too messed up to fix.
But I think this is a fascinating tale. You get to see everything from each person in the family, and almost like a conversation with each person. Your husband writes something at the end, as does your daughter. One of the things that I think is absolutely amazing, you've got to take a look at this, when you go through the different school ages too, and how you dealt with different things at different ages, but you wrote a letter to the kindergarten teacher and said,
she thought I was crazy.
Well, I think anybody would think you're crazy, but it's kind of crazy brilliant. Saying, you know, you're going to be his kindergarten teacher, and you chose her very carefully, and here are all the things that he needs to learn.
Right.
And you put it all in these bullet points,
I love that.
and it's amazing. And I don't know how she didn't look at this and go, oh no, I need to run in the other direction, but it's exactly what we should all do.
And maybe we should take this into our IEPs. I've got one tomorrow.
Well, but your list is going to be different than his was in kindergarten. But you could print out from skills. Your child has the skills, and you could print out all the things that he has left to learn and say, here, now what are you going to take on? I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing was, I actually wrote his IEP bullets too. I didn't leave it to the school because the thing is they have so many kids to help, they can't do it right.
No.
They can't.
Did he go to public school?
He did go to public school, but he had an aide since kindergarten, and I was really...
Until when?
He had an aide through 5th grade.
Okay.
And in 5th grade, you know, he was pretty good academically. But he did not, the social piece was still not there. He still had a lot, you know, the social is the last to come.
Right.
He didn't have real friends till college. And I tell my mommies, you know, in high school, I still was setting up situations, making things happen. And
well, even you have a letter in the back. I mean, I just keep referring, but because you're going to love it. You have a letter in the back that he wrote to you from college about a difficulty that he was having, and then you have your husband's response writing back to him.
Because I couldn't do it anymore.
That is absolutely amazing, because he writes and says, Mom, I'm having trouble with this and I'm doing this, and your husband writes back and says, hey, we taught you how to solve problems. Stop writing your mother and asking her to solve your problems for you. You figure it out.
Yes.
I bet you can figure out what to do about your backpack being locked in a room. You're a smart guy. I bet you can figure it out.
Well,
amazing.
And the thing that was really pivotal for me, you know, we're so used to following behind them and cleaning up what they don't do.
Yeah.
And it becomes such a habit for us as moms that we continue to do it because we think they're going to forget something important.
Yeah.
And it was my neighbor across the street who never had a kid with autism, who was the woman I'd stand in the middle of the street in our bathrobes and we discussed the world's problems. And she was, you know, I'd knock on her door and I'd say, are you in? You know, do you have, you know, is the psychiatrist in? Can I come talk to you?
Right.
And I said, I need a session. And one day she said to me, I said, you know, I don't get it. Here he is. He's so smart. He's so accomplished. He's at college studying engineering, and he still has no confidence. What is going on here? And she said, it was brilliant. It's like she hit me over the head and she said, have you ever thought that maybe you do too much for him? And it was like, and when you do that, you're telling him he doesn't know how to do it for himself. And I never realized that. And I walked away and I thought for a few minutes and I immediately dialed Ryan and I said, okay, Ryan, this is the pink slip to your life. Do not call me when you lose something. Do not call me when you don't know what to do in a certain situation. I said, if you murder someone, call me.
Right.
I'll
If
be
you end
there.
up in jail, I'll come get you.
Yeah, but do not call me over all these little things because you know how to do this. And that's when Ryan started to take off.
Yeah.
That's great, because you gave him the independence. And
I let him know I thought he could do it.
Right.
So if you were to say, this is a hard question, the single most important thing in your journey with Ryan, what would it be?
I think that you have to combine everybody.
Okay.
And you have to use all of them. The behaviorists, the educators, the doctors, they each have a piece of the puzzle. And they each have a part that's really important. And if you use all of them, your kids can get better. You know, you have to treat them medically so that their bodies, so that they become able to learn.
Yes.
Because sometimes they're so goofed up they can't learn.
Yeah.
And if you don't do the behavioral piece, then they won't learn the things that they missed.
Yeah.
And it's almost like taking a stroke victim and bringing them back.
And bringing it back.
You have to teach them things that other kids just know. When I used to say to Ryan, smile for the picture,
And,
he didn't know how to
the
do
fake
that.
smile. I get
He'd
that.
go like this. You know, he looked like the choir
Why
boy.
does it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just, all those little things that we have to teach them one by one, behavior by behavior. And it's a good thing I didn't know how many things I'd have to teach. Otherwise, I might not have started.
Right. But let me also just say to you, and I know Shannon feels this way, you could have had this success story and you could have gone off and lived your life. But instead, you wrote this book.
I wanted to.
You're inspiring, but you couldn't because you had that voice saying, help others, help others.
Well,
kudos to you. Kudos to you. Take this in for not abandoning the community and helping us with your story. Thank you.
You're welcome. But I made this deal with God.
Okay.
Which I
We
didn't
all-
even
I think we all do.
I didn't even believe in God at the time. So this is how crazy this deal was. I said, if you fix mine, I'll do whatever I can to help the others.
Done the same thing.
Same deal.
So
we
is
made.
she. We've all
Same
been
deal.
there.
It's why I'm sitting here. You
It's
know, 'cause
why
it's
I'm
me
here
paying
too,
my
and
karmic
why
debt.
I do act today.
Yes.
Well, you guys do so much for all of us.
Well,
Thank
but you bring
you.
the book here.
Your book is
so.
doing so much.
We're out of time, but I have to thank you so much. Where can people get the book?
They can get it on Amazon. They can get it on iTunes. They can get it on all the places where you can get books.
I know you're in there.
And it actually mails from my garage because we're a mom and pop operation.
Okay.
So if you want me to write something in your book, send me an email. Tell me who to make it out to, and
What
your
email
is-
do you want them to write to?
It's at Marsha@iknowyou'reinThere.com.
Okay. All right,
Have them email
wonderful.
you. Okay, and we'll have you back sometime.
Well, good.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're going to be at the Autism One conference?
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be
And-
at Farmers Market this Saturday,
Where?
along with
Which farmer's market?
the one in LA.
One in downtown
Okay.
LA.
Along with
Fairfax.
Maria Hung, who
Okay.
wrote another book, and we're going to be meeting with the Taka group.
Okay, great.
Talking
wonderful.
about this.
Great.
Wonderful. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank Nancy for being here. I want to remind everybody to sign up to do the ATMF run.
We need your help.
Tomorrow on the show, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox will be here answering your questions. We also have Kara Kaczynski, the Pocket OT, is going to be here. She's got 10 tips for how to have a successful play date when one of the play dates is on the spectrum and the other one is not. So
that's a
I
good
can't
one.
wait. I'll be taking notes for that. So she'll be here tomorrow. We've got some exciting things coming up next week as well. So make sure that you check out this book. And we'll be back tomorrow. But until then, I don't know how much time we have, Kelby.
Well, I told Dorene
30
that I was
seconds.
going to put a copy at every one of her card
Oh, great.
places.
Okay,
Fabulous.
So you can find them there, too.
Okay. Now we are officially out of time.
Okay.
So I'll be back tomorrow. But until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye. for
Bye-bye.
now.